I thank you, Luqman, for joining us on the show today. And first of all, I want to get a perspective from you on the recent happenings around the very controversial fuel subsidies. What is the update? What I'm hearing is that the government has paid some of these subsidy claims, but they are really not at par with what the importers are claiming.
Yes, I can confirm to you that government has started paying, but of course there are still so much outstanding. We believe that the government will continue to pay the subsidy as we progress. However, the major issue is this. If you recall, this subsidy payment has been delayed due to the investigation and all that's going on about the subsidy scam. Now that has delayed payment, and the implication of that, for the petroleum products marketing company is that they will not be able to meet their obligations to the banks.
Right.
And that will affect the margin they are going to get. So the banks are also, very, very careful this time around in going into that business because of the implications. Again, you will recall that the issue of appropriation for the subsidy has been an issue which the government is yet to address. Right. So when you put all this together, everybody is trying to do, let's wait and see. But the good news...
I was just going to make a point. I will be interested to see how the market reacts to this news flow. And I think one thing that hasn't been discussed a lot recently is the fact that the Ministry of Finance has actually indicated to some extent that they've actually paid out all the subsidies for this year. So the implication of that is that if there will be no more subsidy payments, where does this leave the oil marketers in terms of importing the much needed fuels into Nigeria?
Well, the outcome of the current importation, because there are some products that are coming into Nigeria now, which the government will also need to pay subsidy on. Now, the outcome of how the government handles that is what is going to determine what the next line of action will be. But as you are aware, I don't think the government will want to spend money without appropriation. And given the fact that everybody knows that, chances are that for the last quarter, which we are in, starting from October, and the first quarter of next year, we may have challenges with petroleum products again if payment is not made on time.
Well, what are you hearing with respect to the difference between the claims that the marketers are making and what the government has actually paid?
Well, if you recall, the issue of the subsidy scam is still out there. Some marketers are still not being paid because of that, and reconciliation is still going on that. And whether you like it or not, that is also going to affect some marketers. The implication of that is the fact that you won't have the whole of them doing this business, which is going to affect supply, really.
Okay, let's shift gear a bit and move to the upstream oil and gas space. We know that the likes of Shell have been divesting assets. What we're also hearing now is that Conoco is also looking to divest. Give us a perspective on what is going on with respect to this divestment and the opportunities that it's opening up for local producers, or should I say local explorers.
Yeah, the Shell divestment has actually opened up the space in the E&P environment of the oil and gas industry. We are seeing companies that actually participated in the Shell divestment coming up to see what they could do with the ConocoPhillips assets too. The implication of that is that you are seeing capacity building, local capacity building, because most of these companies are indigenous companies. And we believe that if that continues, it is going to expand the space and the opportunities for the indigenous companies in this space. We just hope that those who are acquiring now will also invest in new opportunities that is going to be brought up by the bid round that will be coming up shortly. So we believe that that is going to increase local participation in the E&P space.
All right, if you can bring this back to the markets, especially the banks, I want to get a sense of how you think all these developments in the oil upstream space and, of course, the downstream space with the fuel subsidies may impact the banks and their performance this year. I think, for instance, we do know that banks lend quite a bit to some of these oil marketers that import fuel into Nigeria.
Yes, I think the banks have been very, very careful. They've closely monitored the trends in the the petroleum products market, funding. Everybody is very careful in that space because if you recall, that's one area that affected the banks in the past that led to the challenges we had between 2009 and 2011. So the banks are very careful and are watching the trends in that space so that it doesn't turn out to be what it was in the past. Now, for the upstream E&P space, you see a lot of Nigerian banks participating in that sector. Of course, because it's stable and there are a whole lot of opportunities there. Unlike what it used to be in the past, you are seeing a whole lot of Nigerian banks driving that activity really, in this current dispensation in all spheres, really.
All right, Luqman, thank you so much for joining us and, of course, sharing your perspective on the upstream and downstream oil and gas space in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Luqman Agboola, joining us from Diamond Bank.